Good evening. We're glad to have you here this evening on a Wednesday night, and we have a distinguished person filling in for Pastor Ed tonight. Brother Lanny Downard's going to lead our Bible study this evening. And so, what we're going to do this evening, before we start, by special request, Lanny asked if we would open up with a song. So, and it's going to be in regard to his subject this evening would be on prayer. So, what we want you to do this evening. And those of you, by the way, that are online with us, glad to have you with us tonight. But if you here in our sanctuary, you got a song book, turn to hymn number 451. We are going to sing all four verses of a song called "Tell It to Jesus." It's about prayer, so we're going to do all four verses. Hymn number 451. If you'll turn to that, we'll sing all the verses of "Tell It to Jesus." 451. We go with verse 1. Ready? Are you weary? Are you heavy-hearted? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Are you grieving over joys departed? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other, such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Do the tears flow down your cheeks unhidden? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Have you sins that to men's eyes are hidden? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. Do no other, such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Do you fear the gathering clouds of sorrow? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Are you anxious? What shall be tomorrow? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other, such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Are you troubled at the thought of dying? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. For Christ's coming kingdom are you sighing? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other, such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. And by way of announcements, before Lanny comes and shares our Bible study tonight, don't forget Vacation Bible School coming up this Sunday evening, starting at 6 o'clock. And it'll be going through the week from 6 till 9, from the 16th through the 21st. You can still pre-register online at our website, or you can come by on the 16th and register then. Yes?
We will have a VBS meeting tonight, right after service.
There will be a VBS meeting this evening right after our Bible study tonight, so that for those of you in our sanctuary. Okay, and if you have prayer requests, since Pastor Ed is not here this evening, if you would like to just go ahead and you can contact the church office and let those be known, or if you want to post it on online, probably be better if you went ahead and just contacted the church office, leave a message with Ginny, and she will make sure that Pastor Ed will get that those prayer requests for you. So again, so glad to have you here this evening in our sanctuary, and those that are on Facebook and YouTube. Glad to have you worshiping with us in our Bible study tonight. And without further ado, we're going to have Brother Lanny come and share with us God's Word tonight.
Well, I don't know who's responsible for the stool, but I appreciate it. And welcome everybody here. I told Pastor Ed here 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was an emergency come up and they canceled Wednesday night prayer meeting. And I told him after that, I said, that's not a good idea. I'll be willing to take your place on the spur of a moment as long as I'm in town. We're not on one of our trips. But he's on the trip, and here I am tonight. I have not done this in several years, I guess, but I guess I feel a little bit intimidated when I look out and see all the school teachers here. It's like, but I won't let that bother me too much. It's been a while since I've spoken. Let me begin by saying that I believe prayer meeting is the most important service in our church. More than Sunday school, more than the church worship. Those are all extremely important, but things are done more by prayer. So let's begin tonight by having prayer. Ray took off on me. I was going to call on him. Marjorie, would you lead us in prayer?
Father, we thank you that we can come freely to pray and meet with you and hear your word. And Lord, for those who are not here tonight, who are sick, who are for some reason can't be here, we pray for them, lift them up to you. We pray for our pastor as he's on his way home, pray for he and his family. And thank you that Lanny was willing to step up to the plate and lead us tonight as we look to you for answers and prayer requests and all the things that are necessary that we should be doing in our Christian life. Thank you for his being willing to step up to the plate. We ask these things in your son's name.
You know, I guess been 3 or 4 years ago, Debbie and I started coming to this church. We had decided we was going to leave a church and come here. And so we started going around to all the churches. I've been in this association 75 years, I guess. That's how old I am. I don't remember anything else. And I've known most of the pastors and the churches and stuff. But as we went around to see where God was going to lead us, prayer meetings what was, like I said, the most important thing to us. And we'd go to church on Sunday morning and see 100+ people at a lot of our Baptist churches around here, the ones we tried out, or I don't know if you call it trying it out, but then we'd go back on Wednesday night. There might be 5 people there. And that's, to me, that was a little bit discouraging. Then we tried Sterling. Come here, and there's about 30 on Sunday morning, 15 or 20 on Wednesday night. And that felt where we ought to be. Now, I know you've all seen me make comments and stuff or pray, and a lot of times I start tearing up, but I'll try not to do that tonight. If I do, you got to forgive me, I guess. But that second verse said, are your tears flowing down unnoticed or something like that? And so I do get emotional easy. It's maybe some of the medication I take. I don't know. But anyway, we're here, and I think one of the first sermons to ever been preached 2,000 years ago by the disciples took place after a prayer meeting. And I say that because the disciples never came to Jesus and said, teach us to preach. Never came and said, teach us to do church, but said, teach us to pray. Luke 11:1 says, teach us to pray. Jesus said, in his Father's house are many mansions. In his Father's house is called a house of prayer. And I think that as I try to talk about prayer a little bit, I guess I really, here recently, Pastor Ed started doing altar call right off the bat. I love it. I don't mean I'm going to run down there every Sunday morning. I don't run anyway. My running days are about over. But I really appreciate that. I hope we never quit it, because I think it really sets up the worship service that he's about to give us. Paul had told Timothy, we've all been studying, I guess most of us get the same lesson. He told Timothy to petition in prayer, intercessions, thanksgiving. We've got all these things to do. But here last week, I guess it was, we celebrated Independence Day here in America. I don't know any of you's ever, this is my Bible. It's a patriotic Bible. And it's just loaded with patriotic stories. Debbie got it for me actually at a gospel singing that Legacy 5 was holding here in this area. And the guy that started that, I never met him until that day, but his cousin is a real good friend of mine. And I didn't know they were related till I asked him. And I seen the last name was the same. And he said, oh, yeah, he's a vet. And I said, yeah, he's got a vet. But so he worked for Hogan Leasing, where I leased trucks for many years, and we become very good friends. But he sold me this Bible, I guess one of their ways of keeping their group going and stuff. And I would just love to read some of the stories I've read. One of the things that said in here in this was Abraham Lincoln said that this generation of Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. That would, if I had to title this, that's what I would call this, a rendezvous with destiny. You probably know me enough to know you wasn't going to get out of here tonight without a war story. So, and it ain't about Vietnam. So, but on October 26, 1942, is there anybody that was alive at that time? I wasn't yet. 47's for me. You don't have to admit it if you were, but anyway, all the Marines in a man's name was Mitchell Page. Has anybody ever heard of him? Good. That'll be a new name for you, or whatever. I'm not a, what do you call it? I lost my thought. Anyway, I'm not a history buff, I guess would be a good way to put it. And but his platoon, everyone was killed, and he fought off, or wounded, but he fought off an entire regiment. A platoon, if some of you don't know, is about 30 people, a Marine platoon. And a regiment is big, hundreds and hundreds of them. But he fought them off single-handedly, manning 4 machine guns. Don't know how anybody could do such a thing, but he did. And because of that, he received the Congressional Medal of Honor. And in years to come, those guys are always asked questions and stuff, but he was repeatedly asked why he was willing to put his life on the line for his country. And I know there's a lot of our young men out there that get into battles and wars and stuff. Please always remember them in prayer. And it's very important. He said it took him back to a Pennsylvania 3-room country school where children were taught the traditions of America, that they literally left themselves or felt themselves a part of glorious heritage. I feel that way about our country. I feel like I really inherited a lot. Where the teacher started the day with a Bible verse, the Pledge of Allegiance, I remember them days. And I'm sure some of you still were able to, when you were teachers, were able to teach the Bible, you know, or bring up verses or something, and have prayer. Prayer isn't even allowed in the schools anymore. I don't think they even allow Bibles in schools, probably. They do have? Okay, that's good. When Paige left home to join the Marines, it was a 200-mile walk. I can't even, I would have always been willing to serve my country, but I really enjoyed the plane rides and the, I don't know if I enjoyed them, but the plane rides or the trains. I got my first train ride while in the Army. And I just don't imagine I would have walked 200 miles to join, but you never know. His mother packed him a lunch with a note, "Trust in the Lord, and he will guide you always." And she sent him with a little Bible. I got sent the same way. The day I left for Vietnam, it has I may have showed this before sometime. It has a little metal plate in it. I don't know. I don't believe that would ever stop the bullet or nothing, but it's, my presence shall go with you is what it says on it. And I also had a note. It's still in here, 50-something years old, wherever it is anyway, it's in there. And it's my dad's sermon notes for a Wednesday night prayer meeting. And it was just one little sheet of paper. And I got to have about 4 pages of notes, but anyway, there it is, that one little sheet of paper. And he talked on Psalms 46. The preacher told me I could talk in Psalms or talk anything I wanted, so I'll probably stay away from Psalms. But I have quoted Psalms 46, part of it anyway, many times here. It's still, I read it nearly every day. This is not I did carry this Bible for quite a while, but I sent home, I wanted my big Bible. You can't imagine the little print in these things. It's pretty tough while you don't have good lighting and stuff, or you're in the jungle or wherever you may be. But anyway, I've always, I'd pass this around, but it's starting to tear apart. Anybody want to see it, I'll let you. But anyway, she had sent that note in there saying, "Trust in the Lord, and he will guide you always." I kind of feel like I was taught that all my life. He said he will never forget sitting in a foxhole, bloody, burned, and injured after a fierce hand-to-hand combat. He said he emptied his pack looking for a bandage to stop the bleeding from a bayonet wound. Out fell the little Bible. And it opened up to Proverbs 3. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not in your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths." And I don't think that just happened. I think God directs things like that. And he probably, reading about him being bloody and burned and a bayonet stab, everybody around him is dead or wounded severely that can't even fight anymore. I would suspect he needed some encouragement. Debbie and I recently, here in the last week or two, and I don't remember where it was, she might, heard a story about a post turtle. Anybody here ever heard of a post turtle? A post turtle. I knew what it was, but I never thought of it in the way that I would like to explain this. But if you take out on a road somewhere, you see the fence post, maybe a square 4x4 or something, and you set a turtle up on there, his legs ain't touching anything, and he can't get off. Something has to rescue him. Somebody has to rescue him. And he's stuck there, and he'll stay there until he dies. And that's sad. It really is. I've never done that, and I'm glad I haven't. We was in Branson one time, and I brought a little box turtle home with me. It was crossing the road. I thought I was rescuing it, I guess, in a way, but my grandkids and stuff all like playing with, turtles and stuff, and then I would used to take them and put a date on them and turn them loose, thinking, man, someday we'll maybe see him back here or something. He'll be bigger or whatever. But this post turtle's going to stay there till it dies. I took this one that I had just got back. I set it in my boat. We had raccoon, I think it might have been rabbit or whether there was other diseases and stuff, but if you see a raccoon out at noon, there's something wrong. That just, they're a nocturnal animal. And so I called the Humane Society, and they sent a woman out there, and she says, well, if you catch him, I can dispose of him for you or whatever. Like, okay. And then she heard that turtle walking around that boat, and she looked in there and saw it and said, you need to turn that loose. I mean, she really ripped on me pretty bad. She said, he will spend the rest of his life trying to get home. And I'm sitting there thinking, boy, he's got a long walk home, all the way back to Branson from Belleville. But I got him out and turned him loose, and I don't know. Anyway, this post turtle, it's not going anywhere. Our prayers are the starting point of reaching others. If we don't reach out to them, they will die, just like the post turtle. You know, some of our friends, some of the children you're getting ready to teach in Bible school, they may be lost. And it's up to us to have prayer with them, to teach them to pray, to teach them to win them. Like I said, I believe in prayer, and I think that I would like to see a revival in our country. I think everybody would, but it's going to start with prayer. And we can reach these kids in Bible school. We can reach our neighbors. I got a neighbor next door. I've tried my best to witness to him a few times, but I have to admit, I haven't always had the courage to just say, you know, he's 90 years old, and he still cuts his own grass, and I can't even do that. So he was out with a weed eater today. He's hobbling along, but pray for me that I can get enough courage, gumption, whatever you want to call it, to witness to him. He's a dear, dear friend. He helped me build my house. But our neighbors are important. The homeless people that Debbie and I try to reach, it's a little bit difficult sometimes and not a safe area to just get out and talk and stuff like that. So we leave them messages and stuff. And we see the same ones over and over sometimes. And hopefully that one of these days, one of them's going to say, hey, you're the one that give me this. And, you know, at that point, I think I'd probably pull the car over and get out and talk. But we'll pray for us as we go that direction. Pray for our schools. It's a terrible situation that our country is in right now. Every day I think you don't even hardly stand to watch the news. It's just very discouraging. And I don't know. I guess it's up to God. He says, people which are called by my name will humble themselves. We need to really humble ourselves. Like I said, I believe in prayer. I've seen answered prayer many, many times. I've heard my dad come home with a lot of great stories on prayer. He was chaplain at Memorial Hospital one time, one of them that really sticks with me, and he says, this mother was walking in the chapel, and he was getting ready to come home. It was getting late, and she was in there just sobbing and stuff, so he went and talked to her, and she had a little baby in there that had a 104 fever, I think is what it was, and they've tried everything they could to get that down, and he says, well, do you believe in prayer? And she said, I guess. He said, well, I'll tell you what, do you believe that baby ought to have this temperature? No. Said, the Bible says where two or more are gathered together, there I will be. And he sat there and prayed with her. By the time they got done praying, the baby's temperature dropped. They come running in to tell her. He'd be the first to tell you, it wasn't nothing he did. It was what Jesus did. It's what God did. My brother-in-law, Debbie's sister's husband, passed away this past year. He fell out of a tree. He'd already had kidney transplant, kidneys transplanted, and had been on dialysis. He had no business up in the tree, but he climbed that ladder and he got up there and had a chainsaw hanging from him. Fell out of the tree, and they had him over at St. Louis University, I think, hospital or something like that. Is that where we went that night? Yeah, St. Louis University Hospital. And he was in there, and I was sitting out waiting while they going in and out of talking to him and stuff. Not talking to him because he was totally out, but with her sister. There was a family. I guess it's okay to say a black family, you know, but it was a huge family gathering there, and they was in a special room, I guess, that's set up from the actual waiting room, and you could tell the way they were coming and going that they were very upset. Well, their son I think he'd been stabbed, and they didn't expect him to live. He was in pretty bad shape, and I went and asked him. I just kind of went in there really, and I said, "Have you got a pastor or somebody that?" Oh no, we don't have no pastor. I said, "Well, you got somebody to have prayer with you?" Not really. Would you like for me to pray with you? Sure. And we prayed, and when I left there, they all thanked me and stuff. And like I said, it's nothing that I could do, nothing that I did do other than offer to serve the Lord. Went back out there, and Debbie and I was sitting there. Pretty soon they come all out excited. So I can't help but believe there's prayers. Any of you ever had experiences like that? I'm sure you have. That you'd want to share for a minute? Or no? Okay. You're shy. You ought to be up here. Well, I'll tell you what. I started out saying that I felt a little bit intimidated with all the teachers here, but one of them's here that I had for a teacher. I was able to type this because of her. So you're not at a loss, Marjorie. I'm not fast, and I'm not good, and I don't do it very often. But I thank you for the time that I've had to share with you. I really don't have a lot more to say. I don't guess it matters, but I guess we can say thank you to everybody that's been online, I guess you call it. I don't.
Ruth said, "Go, Lanny, go."
Who did?
Ruth Leach.
Oh, okay.
Janet said hello. Maria says hello. Donna Gibson. Pastor Denise got on just a few minutes ago, and they're saying hello from the train.
Okay. I'm on the line now, huh?
On the air.
Well, if I'm still on the air, I thank Pastor Ed for allowing me to do this. I hope at least we still have prayer meeting, and that's going to be the most important part of this, as far as I'm concerned. It's not my speaking. You'll never see me jumping around here like Pastor Ed. I don't think I'd last with breathing probably, but anyway, we've got a great pastor. I hope he's still listening.
He is.
And I mean that.
He said he appreciates prayers for the train ride home.
Okay. All right, well,
And I can share one quick story.
sure.
I don't know how it turned out, but when my father had a quadruple bypass heart surgery, and we were in the waiting room, there was someone else's father who was in the ICU, and there were things that were not going well. And they came out screaming and crying and whatnot. Now, my mother, who was obviously very concerned about her husband, walked over and, just talked to them for a few minutes and prayed with them. I don't know what the outcome was. We didn't find that out. But their hysteria then kind of came back down, and the fact that my mother was willing to do that, I think that's what God calls us to do, like what you did. Linda, you guys had that with Rick and Debbie when they came to visit. And your mom was sick, I think? My dad. Your dad. That they went to be there for you guys and ended up praying for somebody from the car accident. So, God puts us in places for a reason, and I think that's, offering to pray, I think is the best thing we can do.
I believe that too. I think I've been asked a lot of times, how come I wasn't a preacher like my dad? Well, that's obvious. I'm not that good of a speaker, but But that's not where God called me to be. I spent 40 years, half of it as a truck driver, the other half as a manager, but I've been able to witness to a lot of people. You know, one of them's one of the best prayer warriors that I've ever had. And I went 20 years without even seeing him. We'd talk every couple of weeks or so, and he lives in Maryland, and he went to work for the government. I had asked him to come and teach my RAs when I was at Pleasant Valley what it's like to grow up on an Indian reservation, because I knew he was a full-blooded Indian, and so was his wife. And he said, "Oh, I don't know nothing about, church." I said, "I don't want you to talk about church. I want you to talk about growing up on an Indian reservation." And he did. And shortly after that, he really started serving the Lord. And Debbie and I went out to where the plane crashed from Flight 93, I think it was. We happened to just go by it and said, "Man, that's where that plane crashed." So we drove back there to that old field, and then we went back a couple of 3 or 4 years later. They've really built it up nice, and they got a memorials and stuff there. If you haven't never seen it, it is a unique thing to see. And he met us there, and so we got to spend some time together. But one of the things that I've always done since I got talked into this one time was I got a prayer list here, and I've had this stuck in my Bible for a long time. One of the people that I prayed for on here, along with Mike Kiddo was his name, in Maryland, he had a friend. Her name was Despy. I think she was pretty sickly, but she's an Indian up on the reservation somewhere, and was very, very bad sick. And he said, "Pray for her. She's not saved." And so we started praying for her. Probably before I even got a chance to bring her name up in the church where I was going at Winstanley, and I got news that she had passed away, but before that she had become saved. Just, I'm talking hours, before. And he got to her over the phone and was able to witness to her like that. But I got about 4 names checked on here that's been saved since then, and I call them I don't know what you call them, a hard one. They're not just easy going people. They're people that are pretty stuck in their ways and very difficult sometimes to witness to. So I guess we can close now and take prayer requests. And thank you all for being online.